adjustments.
Yes, I would like to add a deliver item around the school calendar under deliberations. We can, I'll explain it further when we get there.
Okay. Should we take that up as our first deliberation?
It's totally up to,
All right, yeah. Well, let's do that first
Okay.
before we dive into all the policies.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other agenda adjustments? Okay. Correspondence, resignations, nominations, and retirements.
yeah, I just wanted to let the board know, one of the new pieces that we're responsible for in the SAU is testing for lead in the water. So all our faucets where kids would get drinks, bubblers, that type of thing, have all been tested and everything passed. I want to thank Lance and Ben. They took care of that across the SAU. So that's been done, and that becomes a yearly test now.
Is that just bubblers, or is it also the bathroom sinks?
It's sinks where students would be drinking water. So I'll use the easiest example. We're not required to test a sink in the science lab at the high school because it's there to get rid of material and potentially wash hands.
Yeah.
But any of your sinks where a student fill their water bubbler or, their water bottle, those all get tested.
Okay. I just was noting that when I was in Bow, the sinks in the bathroom, hand washing sinks, had signs that said, these sinks are not part of our ongoing testing for lead, so
Right.
basically don't drink out of these sinks now, maybe? I don't know, so I just was curious.
And I think, Lance and Ben are formulating a long-term plan as well. So we may move to signs like that in the future because especially when you're dealing with little kids, they don't often know the
Which
distinctions.
is drinking water and which is,
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
that's just what I was wondering.
But we're in very good shape, so thank to those two gentlemen. That's it for correspondence, resignations, nominations, and retirements.
Okay. Approval of minutes.
Okay. I'd like to move to accept the minutes of the Hollis School Board meeting of November 2022, with the following amendments. Page 3, line 39, fund should be plural, funds. And page 4, line 24, correct punctuation at the end of the sentence.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
And we have some non-public.
Yep.
Move to accept the minutes of the Hollis School Board non-public session of November 2002 as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, 5-0. Great. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone here for public input, but since it's posted on the agenda for 6:10, we'll leave it open until 6:40, and if anyone shows up in that time frame, we will welcome their comments. In the meantime, we'll move on to the principal's report.
Yes, the principals once again did a very nice job, and I want to thank them. They provided us with all the upcoming important dates of significance. In terms of the hues under building and grounds, they are waiting for their swing chains to be installed on a new swing set. Once that is done, they'll be able to use that structure, so we're excited about that.
So are the kids.
Yes, I'm sure they are. Hughes is still in need of a part-time custodian, but that's it for the district. We're in good shape. We've made a lot of progress on that. As you might have noticed driving in tonight, all our snow removal flags are up around the parking lot for plowing. My goal would be not to have to use them, but it's nice to have them up.
Influence over that matter.
We're continuing to do our daily maintenance cleaning. If you walked in and looked down the first grade hallway, you would notice that we had new carpets arrived. So those were in last year's budget. That's probably the only thing we're seeing is just the time it takes to get some things to arrive. But I think we're all experiencing that at home. I'd like to thank and commend the Mrs. O'Brien's class. They hosted Veterans Day and did just a remarkable job. We have Mrs. Ispicki put the thank you in your board packet for everybody to see, and it was really wonderful. And it's great for our children to spend time with the veterans. I think it's a very powerful thing.
I just want to point out, because I happen to be able to attend this, that 2 of our more recent staff hires turned out to be Navy and Marine veterans, both women. And the administration invited them to sit with the veterans, and they were both so reluctant.
And the kids were like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it
Carol
was amazing.
there. It
Yeah,
was
we were there.
absolutely so moving
very
to
cool.
see our staff participate too.
Yeah.
yeah, and it was great we got to socialize with the veterans before the ceremony began, and that was just really wonderful to see different people in our community and who is connected to the community that we wouldn't have expected.
Yeah.
Things like that, which is really awesome.
And that pretty much goes on K to 12. And at the high school, it's very powerful because the veterans come in and speak more about their views around the flag, what service is meant to them. So much more personal conversations. And that is, I think it's very moving for the veterans because, again, so many times we only hear the negative things about adolescents or children. And we have a lot of great kids that do a lot of wonderful things every day. And that sends a powerful message. The annual awards for Hawks, the monthly awards were given out, and Candy gave out 75 Golden Wings Awards. And these are really kind of assisting us getting back into our routine and rewarding of good behaviors. And we're starting to, I think, turn the corner, and kids are getting used to it. I know it sounds like we're in December and we're just turning the corner, but there's a lot that the students have to learn, and there are a lot of students who haven't been in the buildings for a while. So it was very, very good time for that. Under enrollment, I just call your attention, first of all, to the HBS historical enrollment down the bottom of the page at 373. That's the largest we've been, you can see, since 2011.
September, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a large number. We, just like last month, we are concerned about grade 1. Paula and I have met. We are in the process of advertising. What we're looking for is we don't believe that bringing in another teacher and shifting would be good. But we are looking to see if we can hire a certified teacher. And then Paula and Abby, our curriculum coordinator, are working on a schedule where that individual would come in and do the pull-out groups and things like that. So that way, all of a sudden, your class of 20 would be down to 14 and 15 for general instruction and meeting the needs of all the students. So we'll have that advertisement out there. We'll be interviewing, and if we are fortunate, we'll be able to bring somebody in probably as we start the new year.
Are you thinking this person, like we did with that one second grade bubble, might work into the staff?
Absolutely.
Track with this group if it keeps growing?
It gives them a proving ground. And as we go through the budget, we're going to talk about that. We've talked to the budget committee about a staff member there. But I do think we're starting to see a turn in our applicants for hourly wage jobs. I think the economy is shifting a little bit.
Oh, improving. You mean?
Yes,
Okay.
improving. Yeah.
Direction.
And we've, we've recently seen that in the number of candidates applying for our custodial positions and things of that nature. So we're hoping that we're going to turn the corner there. Other than that, our teachers are doing an amazing job. As we note in grade 1, we're slightly bigger than we'd like to be, but overall, we're very good. And I do want to turn it over to Gina for a minute. Just, I kind of skipped and I forgot. You had the other piece. Go ahead.
Yep, so this didn't make it to the board report because it's Fresh Information Friday. So we found out that we have 2 honored students at Hughes from Mrs. Miller's class. Many of our students at Hughes entered the Radon Poster Contest, and Caitlin Randall is the first place winner for the state. Wow. And she is receiving a $100 Amazon gift card, and the classroom is receiving one as well for classroom supplies.
Oh, wow.
And then Max Canaway also is recognized as our second place winner for the state. So he will be receiving a $75 Amazon gift card, and Mrs. Miller will receive another $75 gift card for the classroom. So we're very proud of them, and they're going to be featured in the calendar that comes out, and they'll be promoted in social media in January as we kind of promote National Radon Awareness Month. So
Well done, kids.
And that will
Yeah.
tie into
Good
my
stuff.
questions later about the science curriculum.
Andy, can I pop back to the enrollment
Sure.
questions? Like, obviously, we're talking about grade 1, which has 3 classrooms that are currently over our district policy maximums, and now all 5 of our kindergarten classrooms are at
Yep.
max, district max. I know you said you're exploring hiring a single teacher. What is our plan if more kindergartners come in?
If more kindergartners come in, we'd do the same plan, and we would go, I would probably come to the board and say the first goal would be to take it out of the operating budget for funding. If it wasn't there, we would go to contingency. And as we talk about the budget a little bit, that's kind of the same model we'll have for next year, because a lot of these classes are going to be close, and starting the year very close to our ed specs.
yeah, watching it carefully. Thank
Yeah,
you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the board reports? I do want to, take a moment to thank Candy and Paula, because I do enjoy them, even though I'm in the buildings regularly, this and that. There are things that we miss, just like what Gina just announced. So these are very helpful, and I think, from my vantage point, it also helps staff to learn what everybody else is doing, because sometimes we get isolated in our grade, so we know what my other first grade teachers are doing, but it's nice to know what's going on in the fifth and sixth grade, so I really appreciate their efforts.
I would like to ask about, because in my family, we have just come off quite a spectacular run of unwellness contagion. How are our schools doing? Because in terms of just general,
Our schools are
COVID
doing
and
well.
RSV and all the other crud
Yeah,
that's going
our
on.
schools are doing well.
The
I
petri
mean,
dish it is.
I would categorize where we are now as a school as something we would have dealt with pre-COVID,
Okay.
So
So a typical simmer rather than
yeah.
big spikes.
Yeah, like getting to the 23rd will be good, because it's just, it's a natural piece, and then we'll come back, and we'll have probably 2 or 3 good weeks in January, and then we'll limp into
Right.
February vacation,
Right.
and then usually after that, we're over the season. But that's the other area where I want to commend staff. I mean, our staff cover for each other when they can. So we are seeing some attendance issues, not for any other reason than what's going around, but at the same time, they're making it work every day, which
Good.
is awesome.
Budget.
Budget, yes. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by passing around a one-pager, because not everybody likes numbers like me. So I figured I'd start with an overview. And in your board packet, you had the Excel spreadsheet. So just like when we have a budget meeting, I always go to the last page of the Excel spreadsheet, because it gives me the end result that I need to know right away. So right now, we are at $1,342,307 for an 8.62% increase. If the voters passed all the warrant articles, which is HESER, our regular contingency, our SAU trust, our maintenance trust, and our special ed trust, along with the SAU budget, that would go to $1,342,307,000 of an increase, or 8.62. On that final page, you'll notice that right now, we are over guidance by $77,292.36. When we went to the budget committee this year, they basically provided 0 for the percentage, because they knew it was going to be a difficult year based on just our construction costs and what we had done from a bond point of view. They did tell us to come back when we get further along in the budget to talk about relief to guidance. So that $77,292, what Kelly will discuss with the budget committee at their next meeting, is the one additional teacher that we're requesting based on enrollment. That teacher would be 99. We're only asking for relief of 77, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, it's still early in the budget process. So that's where we are today. But moving back to my one-pager, I thought it was important to kind of clarify the dollar increases from last year, just so people would have a good understanding. Our bond principal and interest is going up by $327,622 to do all the construction we've been doing. All right, but that's the most significant item.
That's
That's-
H-Step plus
it's-
H-Smart.
Yes, basically, all your bonds are now hitting on the books.
But that
But-
was the expected amount. You're not
Yes.
saying that was exceeding what we originally planned.
No, but
Okay.
it's just, when you look at that 1.3 million, you say, well, where's it coming from? All right, so that 327 was voter approved. The second thing, salary increases that were approved by the voter and associated FICA costs are $218,208. So those first 2 items the voters have already approved, it's just they're seeing it for the first time. Health insurance, the GMR was a guaranteed maximum rate of 4.1%, so that results in $141,676. The new items that we'll go through a little later on, non-personnel items are $157,135. Contracted services for special ed, so this is your OT, your PT, your speech, all those type of services, maybe services for children who are visually impaired or have hearing difficulties, going up by $144,480. So those 5 items basically put us at $1 million. And we're not really talking anything educational. We are in new items, which we'll go through. Then we have the replacement computer equipment. Remember, we've moved to a K-12 cycle, so basically, we're built into the budget the new Chromebooks that would be purchased, and then students will stay with those Chromebooks until they go to 7th grade. The SAU assessment, the increase of the total amount that is attributed to Hollis is $58,339. The regular increase from our transportation costs for our bus contract is $37,181. And our energy increases for propane and electric are $18,005. I want to note there, I did the same presentation last week in Brookline, where we haven't been able to move to our energy efficiencies yet. We've just started to do things to their buildings. Their increase dollar amount was $74,000. Okay, so I think we're seeing the value of the solar, the wrapping of the building, all of those things. I'm not saying that $18,500 is cheap, but when you look at the 2 facilities we're talking about,
Relatively,
I think we're starting to really make some progress with our environment from a comfort learning point of view. So
Does
when
does that difference have any visibility with folks at Brookline to see that, hopefully with their efforts, that better days are coming,
Right.
and here's our fruit is coming home
Well,
for
they,
us?
like Hollis and like the co-op, started off with what I'll say a relatively small project. But that's gonna get them 2 new classrooms, a new library, new service areas, new security entrance, and all of that would be upgraded wiring and all those pieces, and the elevator,
That's
and,
for ADA, right?
yeah, and LED lighting. So I think they'll start to see it, and the plan would be to kind of phase in what, like we did in Hollis, and like we started the co-op, because the co-op did their, about $3 million worth of ventilation. Phase 1 is done, phase 2 will be over break. And that in itself will start to show dividends. We're working with the Hollis Energy Committee at the co-op level now, talking about propane, solar, because if we could switch to propane at the co-op, we presently buy propane with the town of Hollis, so that would give us a much larger buying power, which probably would get all of us better rates. So,
I think it would be nice to point out that these differences of energy with the budget committee and let them know that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's comparable schools, they're at 75, we're at 18,000.
right,
Honestly, they have fewer students, right, a few, a reasonable
Yeah.
percentage here, so it's actually even, we're performing even better relative to the number.
so those
They should be
Items
pointed
that-
out.
Yeah, the budget drivers put us at $1,179,018. And I wanted that to be out there because we've always balanced educational improvements and success with facilities improvements and success. And this year, we're seeing that large amount of people have contributed to the bonds and that. And from an educational standpoint, we've made some significant progress. Our teachers are doing remarkable things. So when we go through the new items, we can kind of hash our way through that. I wasn't gonna spend time, unless anybody would like, on the Excel spreadsheet. I personally like it a lot.
I would like, I have some questions if no one else does. so
Okay.
Don't skip past it unless, I'll be quick on this, other people. I don't need to go first, I just don't wanna skip.
Okay.
I like the Excel spreadsheet because, not because talented like you and Amy and others, but because, as I've said repeatedly, even earlier in a meeting today, I like the transparency for the public, and I like the opportunity to ask questions, and I like, to be reminded of things I forget, which is so many things. If anyone, do you mind if I go ahead?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Amy. So some of these things are just things that I'd like clarification on because I forget what they are, or just want to understand better. If we could start from the top there, there are not a lot of these. So, just a few line items down on, item 10.1100.128, the salary substitutes. So I see salary substitutes going up at the primary and going way down at Hughes. And I'm very sensitive, I'm sure we all are, to the need for substitutes and how that works. Can you talk about what that's telling us with respect to, I mean,
Yep. I think what we always look at when we make adjustments in a downward trend is we take column number 2, which would be the FY '22 actuals,
right,
and then we go to where we are in the budget, in this case, around 3. And we had it at 38.5. And that seems excessive based on what our actuals would be.
so it's not a problem so much as a formulaic approach to trying to get a statistical kind of grasp on what to expect.
Correct.
Got it, good, as long as there's not something functionally wrong,
Nope. No,
fine.
the other thing that would be assisting that is, we made the decision to, teachers can sub for each other. Meaning that if I have a free period and Gina was out, I could go in and cover that classroom, and that is compensated at the hourly rate in CBA.
So it takes the edge off also.
It takes the edge off, it allows young staff who maybe are trying to make a few extra dollars, the
Sure,
ability to
sure,
do it without having to leave during the school day. So it's really helped out, plus it gives.
Has it helped? Have you seen?
It does, and
It's
it
good to
also,
know about that, actually.
it actually gives children a known staff member. They've probably seen them around the building,
Oh,
so
I
it's
can
not.
imagine the benefits to everyone. I'm just, so you're getting enough buy-in to that option to make a difference in just labor management, just getting people in the classrooms where you need them.
Yeah, I think it does.
That's great. Further down, item 10.1113.320, environmental sciences contract. It looks like, that's minus 10,000 after many years, so can you remind me of what we've talked about on this subject, the environmental sciences program, how that,
So this is just a small shift to be transparent. There will be a change in the provider due to a natural progression of time, and so we're looking to do to keep our environmental science program at Hughes, but have it potentially come from a different source. And so you'll see it in the new items.
that's what I thought.
So it's
I'm
like a
glad you
plus
said-
minus.
That's great. So as long
Yep.
as we're gonna talk about the science curriculum and delivery per se, then that's great. A little bit further down on that page, number 10.1190, salaries, 504 RTI, regular ed professionals. I have never been clear on what 504 RTI, regular ed, what could that possibly mean? Could you just clarify very succinctly what those line items describe? It's not the amounts so much as, I don't know what that is. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying?
So that is just like a percentage of a teacher that is a regular teacher, not a special ed teacher, that may be helping out in the special ed, or the special ed teacher helping out in
Okay.
regular ed.
Got it. Similar to the substitutes
account-
thing,
yeah.
you've got some job sharing kind of things
Yep.
that go on.
Right.
Excellent,
And
thank
it's
you.
charged to the correct line.
Excellent. So these are more about accounting than they
Right.
are about personnel. Great. That's perfect. Next page, I have 10.1200 account, salary, primary special needs, sped
Can you
teachers.
give the next three numbers?
Yeah.
115.
Oh, 10.1200.115,
Yep, it's the 115 that's helpful, yeah.
sorry, and 116. Just, I see salary, primary special needs, and then salary, special ed teachers, et cetera, and I see big chunks coming out of that and a big increase. What, just, is there any kind of, I have a number of those lines.
Sure.
I guess it has to do with staff, all the way down to contracted services.
Yep.
I've just got highlights everywhere because there are lots of big numbers moving around, and I'm just curious if you could generically describe what that chunk of lines from 115 down to that contracted services 331. How's our staff looking? What does this describe?
So I don't know if I can answer all of your questions, but you'll see that we added a special ed intensive needs teacher that wasn't budgeted. We're ending up going to put it in the budget. You'll see it in new items. So there was a huge increase of what we were spending, and then we took it out of the budget and put it in the new item. So it looks like we're decreasing, but we're really just trying to pull it out to draw attention to the fact that it was based on student need. We had to hire an individual.
So it's just moving and counts, not really a big shakeup in staff. or-
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay, that's cool.
it's more to basically say, if you just had the Excel spreadsheet and you didn't make an adjustment, some people may contend that you weren't showing a new hire. So that we take it out,
Right.
because we needed it for special ed, and show it in a new hire. And then because of the way guidance works here, where we kind of have a guarantee of funding for special ed programming.
Okay. Sometimes a thing is a change, and sometimes it's really just an accounting procedure that puts things where they should be once a change is made. I get that, I just wanted to understand. And I guess we'll talk more about contracted services, which are, again, this is line 1200, 331, and those are really giant numbers. And I know you alluded to it earlier, and it's probably partly included in your, contracted services, special education. So it looks like it's just about those two numbers put together. Are we seeing a shortfall in hiring of specialists that we can't get in the market, or are these the kind of situations where it's more economical to do the contracting, because we don't have enough students to justify, hiring into the staff? I'm just curious why those numbers are so big.
It's a little of both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, a contracted, school psych right now would be $135 an hour. So we may have a school psych, which we do at each building, but when our ratio goes over, we have to balance out the salary position, the benefits and the health and all of that versus the contracted.
Okay.
So there are times where, like next year, if those services went up again, we might go to 2 school psychs in the building because it already being covered by the money from the contracted services. It is a little more difficult right now, so there are some services that we have to contract out for. The other piece is the understanding that if you look through here, you don't see a lot of out-of-district tuition
Right.
or out-of-district transportation. So some of those services, I'll give you an example, could be Autism Bridges,
Sure.
who comes in as professional staff and works with children and kind of is able to offer families what I'll call wraparound services in the
Well, as Amy
system.
Rowe taught us, least restrictive environment, so if we, by spending money, bringing someone here, it's
Right.
better for the student than to have to bust them out and that kind of thing. Okay. so-
Another piece of just the FY22 actual contracted services is, as students were returning, to in-person learning, we did have to increase our school psych services for testing,
Sure.
and so
sure.
that's sort of where we
But
saw.
then there's some transition from the pandemic costs, right? Okay, thank you for that, I
Yep.
appreciate it. If we roll down to the next page, it's 10.1201 and then .115, and all those extended school year ESY. I guess, again, I just saw big numbers and thought I'd ask, is there some big shakeup, or is this, are we short on staff, contracted services, again, 18,000, and then, is that just, again, changes in the accounting lines, because
Are you talking about 330 or 115?
115.
So the wages there.
And 330, there's, again, I'm looking at all those lines and seeing
Sure.
big numbers and wondering how our extended
Right.
school year
So so if
planning
you
is
notice
going.
the 01 accounts, those are HPS, the 02 accounts are Hughes. So at HPS, we're providing a lot more services early on as we see
Right.
more gains long-term. So as the students age and go to 4th, 5th, and 6th, they're requiring fewer summer services to, in order to, the ESY is all about preventing regression. So we
Absolutely.
don't have to do as much or need to do as much to prevent regression at that point. There's also less of a desire to participate in summer school in 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Right.
So it's a combination of both, but we're trying to, once again, budget based on the students that we know and what they've accepted,
Sure.
in prior years.
It's just I see
and
an
based on
$18,000,
actuals.
$19,000 increase for primary school.
Right, but think
And so I'm
of,
wondering, is that partly to do with which specific children need specific services
right,
for the summer
if you
program?
think of it in general terms, if you think of the self-contained programming that we added, those children would have more intensive needs.
So there's a combination of the specific kids in the program and other factors.
Correct.
That drive that number,
Yep.
because it's a big number.
Well, almost, in those programs, most children are, 1-to-1, 1-to-2.
Sure.
So your para costs, and that's where all your wages come in, is your bodies.
Absolutely. Taking care of kids is a labor-intensive act of love. So salaries, preschool para educators on 114.01. There's a minus $8,000 line item there. And again, is that related to specific students as you see?
That
or-
is most likely related to a transition
Okay,
of a student
okay, great.
from out of preschool.
Okay. Oh, I highlighted something stupid, never mind that. Okay, so jumping down to account 2192.111. I see salaries BCBA, which I know what that is. There's a $19,000 increase. Again, this is specific to specific students.
Yep, student needs that where their IEP kind of requires BCBA services.
Right.
And with our intensive need programs,
Excellent.
more students have that
Excellent.
necessity.
Those services are incredibly productive, and we're very lucky we can do this. Replacement computer equipment, giant numbers, but you've already addressed that,
Yep.
right? Here's a thing, just because I don't like knowing what acronyms mean. I don't like being ignorant of acronyms. Item 2400.112. There are two lines there that say salary CIA administrator. Do we have CIA
Curriculum,
here?
instruction, and assessment, so that's your curriculum
Curriculum, instruction,
administrator.
assessment. All right, thank you. I was
Sorry,
hoping-
we can't talk about that.
Yeah, it's top
I
secret.
was hoping it was spies. Oh, God, I am Harriet the Spy. Okay, proposed budget changes, these giant numbers, it's line item 2400.
Yes, those come from the new items that we're gonna walk through. Those are the totals put together.
Why does it say FY13? What am I not understanding? Is it meant to be 23 and it's just a typo?
Correct.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Let's go back to 2013.
I'm just going, we have a 10-year overdue something? Okay, it's not impossible. Trash removal, recycling, 2,600. Big numbers, is that just increases in cost, or is there some new program from the recycling side? that
Costs
we're-
have gone up.
Okay, fine.
It'll be interesting to see if those start to go down with the recycling program.
And with fuel
The
prices
composting.
dropping like
Yep.
a stone also.
So that'll be something we'll be watching.
I love seeing that the snow plowing numbers are not going up and one of them is actually going down. However you did it, don't say it out loud, we may have some
No, I
kind
mean,
of-
as I mentioned in the last meeting, we're not gonna be seeing a lot of
Yeah.
snow.
We're not gonna have any snow.
No.
Excellent,
And
global
again-
warming, bring
So
it
far,
on.
so good, Jim,
Yeah.
but that's it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Just jaw-dropping numbers.
But people like that were at home and were looking at the spreadsheet, if you look at actuals
Yeah.
to proposed,
Yeah,
when Kelly goes, she'll say it to, she's gonna scrub the budget. And what she does is she goes through and say, okay, if we only spent 27, why are we going to 37.5?
yeah, I see that.
And you'll see that trend, it's fine for round one, but it's like, where are we going to end up is closer to the number.
If you can stick to zero on those, I mean, it's just jaw-dropping.
Oh.
It's tempting to just, go buy a plow truck and promise to do it for less. It's just a
Watch
long
out for
go.
the speed bumps.
Yeah.
Hey, with my back. And then the heating propane dollars, I see there's a big jump there, and I guess nothing, that number ebbs and wanes and ebbs
Yeah.
as prices go up and down, so I love seeing the prices going down. It's just great. Regular ed transportation contract, 2,700, 510,
Mm-hmm.
big number increase.
That's just
the
basic.
regular, the contract the SAU
Just the
board approved for.
contract. Great.
And then the $5,000 more for fuel costs,
Right.
again, not knowing exactly where fuel's gonna go.
Sure. Health insurance
Yep.
up by $142,000.
Correct.
That's just the way those percentages
Yep.
work, right?
Yep.
Okay. I see some of the big retirement numbers, but I understand we've had some retirements, so we would expect to see those changes. And then my last things are the last line items: transfer to food service fund, HESA warrant article, transfer to special revenue fund, transfer to expendable funds. It's not that the changes are weird. Can you remind me, because I'm completely blanking, HESA warrant article? This is just based on the new contract, right? The numbers there, the 69,000.
This is based on the contract
Right.
that was already negotiated.
Right, so there's nothing unusual there, it's just that it's not San Bernard's and
Correct.
we see it as a line item. Okay. And then I guess you're gonna talk more about the new classroom teacher you've already alluded to.
Right.
Thank you very much for letting me go through that exercise,
No
I
problem.
appreciate it.
Tammy, good attention to detail.
Yeah, good questions. I had a lot of those same things highlighted, so.
Big
great.
numbers,
Thank you.
gotta know there, thank you.
So with the board's permission, I'll just move over to new items. As I said, this is an area where we really focus in on and work with our principals, and obviously Gina is involved in the curriculum piece. You'll see in round 3, we have a supplies increase, a literacy program upgrade, and learning software. The math curriculum subscription, we are presently doing a K-12 study, so we will just be delaying that. We'll be presenting some information to the co-op board starting there in January and then moving forward from there. So we're just, I'll say delaying.
Can I just
Yep.
add something?
Yep.
We're delaying so that what we can do next year is focus on professional development for math instruction prior to throwing a new resource at teachers. So we're trying to do it more of a slow roll to make sure everyone's ready to go. So
Would we all
we're
be on
still
the same
moving,
page with
so we're
Brookline?
all on the same page, we're all moving together, but we wanted to, rather than overwhelm folks, just make sure everyone felt really confident about going in that. So it's not a negative.
It's not
so-
something you need that you're just cutting out.
No, we have a great program that we adopted a few years back, tremendous results.
Really?
Yeah,
Uncomfortable?
absolutely, so.
Moving down to Hughes, we have much of the same thing. They have a playground mat, a library database software, and a library bookcase. So from the academics, unless we make a change like Gina alluded to, most times those stay through the entire process.
Can I go back to this math thing, sorry. Was this sort of just a calendar-based budget item?
So if you recall, Brookline had adopted Envision 2.0, and then they saw a huge increase in their math scores. Hollis followed. They wanted the same
Right.
program. The teachers requested to have, many of the teachers requested for that same program. So we went forward with it. When I wrote those subscription contracts, I renewed Brookline for 3 years. Hollis was in year 1 of a 4-year. I wanted the contracts to end at the same time so that we could make sure we looked at a resource at the same time together. So we're at that point. My recommendation at this point is to just continue with the 1 year while we do a deep dive and really think
So
about.
it showed up in the budget, kind of triggered by a calendar, not triggered by an identified math need in specific.
No, I mean, I think
Okay.
I saw some things in Brookline, and is
Right.
it just because we've been using it for so, I mean, there's a lot of questions, and now that we have the luxury of doing this deep dive into math with our high school teacher, it just made sense to take more time and make sure we're doing
Great.
it right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Under personnel, first we have at both schools a revamped mentoring program. As I think the board is aware and the community is aware, we're starting to see turnover in our staff. And Gina had requested I'll say an upgrade to our mentoring program to make sure we're providing the supports so that our teachers are successful, because we spend a lot of time, energy, and money in training them. So we absolutely support that. You see the $99,973 for a fully loaded salary and benefits position. That would be that first grade position. Carol asked a great question: what if we had more growth? What we would do is we would go to the contingency, we would have a public hearing, we would tell the voters what we're doing this summer, and we would use the $95,000 that's in the contingency, which is basically the cost of a teacher. If we needed another teacher after that, you have the unreserved fund balance. So this way, we're not overloading a budget with positions we may not need to fill, rather using taxpayers' dollars that they've already allocated between the contingency fund, the unreserved fund balance. So we have the mechanisms in there. We've done it in the past, and what basically the arrangement with the budget committee is the courtesy notification that this is what we're doing, we're having a public hearing, this is where enrollment is, so we would continue to do that.
I'm sorry, did you say that was for next year's second grade or next year's first grade?
It would be next year's second grade,
Because
it's
of this year's first grade, okay,
Thank you.
yep, perfect, yep.
At Hughes, we have the mentoring program, as I spoke about, kind of to answer Tammy's point. we are seeing a transition in our environmental science. So what we're doing is we tend to take it out of the operating budget, highlight it as a new item, because it'll probably be new programming, and we'll be looking at some alternatives and have more updates as we go through the spring, and we know further exactly what that'll be.
So originally you had the round one that the board doesn't tend to see, because it's a sort of wishful thinking, right? You had, it looks like you're thinking of a full-time position.
Right. The request came in at the building level. One of the pieces from a classroom piece is where does it fit?
Right, right.
You know, because you're talking a special.
And
So
this-
if you
So you mean
can't
a
just,
physical space when
well,
you say
not a
fit?
physical space, but
Just a
like.
schedule.
Oh,
you know,
schedule fit.
I go
Got
to,
it.
I go to music, your class goes to the library, somebody else goes to art, okay? So all of a sudden, where are we doing this? And we've always done it as a contracted service up at Hughes, but as I asked the principals in the first round, get everything in, you know, a worst-case scenario, and then we have our discussions, and that's how we ended up, you know, our goal is to kind of, again, utilize the resources we have in this community from an environmental point of view, and take advantage of some of those.
What's the difference between the primary and Hughes in terms of the
Spanish.
specials? It is Spanish?
Spanish is at Hughes and environmentals at HPS.
Okay.
So let me ask a heretical question, if you think back 9 years on how I behaved. I have two scientists in my house, one old one and one new one. And science has become, you know, a new frontier again. We're in a Renaissance era of developmental changes, and I want all the Hollis students to be right there. I mean, Gina was the AP Chem, AP, right, initiated that program at the high school, so I know you know what I'm talking about. Andy was an award-winning math teacher. I wonder if there's a shifting priority, and if it has been thought about as to whether something we offer at Hughes currently more regularly should be looked at on the science side, and that we somehow incorporate. I don't even wanna say
I
it
would
out
be-
I
loud,
know.
cause I'm ready to just bite my own tongue off.
You're fine. I'm gonna jump in, cause you seem uncomfortable with what
Very,
you're about to
I'm
say.
miserable.
I would be more inclined to make it a 6 special schedule, and wow, that would be an absolute nightmare for every parent to try to remember what day their kid's going to something, cause it's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, than it would be to take something away that I think is actually important. So, you know what I mean, like if
It's
they,
important
if you were
They
gonna,
don't
but I'm saying if you make it a 6 special schedule, it's just 6 days. Instead of a 5-day schedule where it's every Wednesday you go to library, every Thursday you go to art. If you add one, it just shifts it all around like a caterpillar. Right,
Yeah.
Torture.
right. So,
Anyway.
cause I think cause not, while I agree with you, and I know this is not the path we're all going down, but I wanna address it. While I agree with you that the sciences are incredibly important, so are world languages.
The culture, all of it.
You know, and seeing
All
how that
of it.
works, and I feel that students who start to learn foreign languages, and I'm seeing it with my own children, they actually start understanding the English language even better at this age. So I would be inclined, if you guys, if that ever came up, that's the support that I would say, is to make it a six special schedule before we swapped anything out.
I would, just to think about a 6 special schedule, that decreases the curriculum for each of those specials.
I know,
So you have to sort
not
of,
ideal.
you have to weigh.
I have a question,
Probably
does Brookline have Spanish?
They do not.
Is there,
Never have.
has there been any studies to show the differential,
There is no difference.
there is no difference?
No.
They're-
There's no advantage to the
Well, there's
exposure.
no
So what are
measurable
these
advantage.
kids?
Measurable
Measurable advantage, that was my question.
So when are the kids getting environmental science now?
It's embedded in
Or
the
what they
curriculum,
would.
that's what happened.
It's part of, so what would it look like with this?
So I think it would
Extra
it would be
piece.
the same model. Essentially, there are a couple of units that are taught for every grade level. So rather than the teacher have a prep period, the teacher is either in the classroom or maybe they just get like a bonus prep period for that particular unit of environmental science, but it's not weekly. It's, fourth grade maybe gets the unit in September, fifth grade gets a different unit in October. So it's more sporadic, more focused, targeted, individualized units.
Gotcha.
So I remember when the district sort of went through a big program that Andy and you launched, that you kind of revamped the curriculum in order to push more science into it through regular classroom delivery rather than a specialist. And I think that's been real important, and my kiddo definitely experienced that, one of my kids, and it was great. Teachers did a great job, et cetera. But I think, I don't know, I'm stumbling over myself.
No, I think it's a great discussion.
Okay.
I think there are a couple things that are going to happen in the next couple of years. You're gonna see this enrollment, larger classes, moving up to Hughes. We need to see if the forecast is correct, and those numbers are gonna continue at HPS, we're gonna stay large. Because that's really a great opportunity to start to really focus in on what we do. And we have, if you go back, I think when I started, we had 6 specials. And then as enrollment dwindled and choices had to be made, that's what resulted in this. So, I think it's a great discussion we can put on as we move into the spring. One of the things that we did do, and it's worked very well, is kind of embed a lot of STEM in the classroom. Because sometimes when you isolate classes, kids lose the connection. And it's kind of like moving to the one-to-one computer environment. We think of the old computer class where the teacher used to drop you off, you'd sit down, we all did our typing, all of those things. And again, did it make sense to why? Now, all of a sudden, I've got this type of board in my room, I've got my own Chromebook, and we're making more connections. So, but I do think it's a larger discussion, and it's one of the areas we are trying to get back to, because really, for the 2 years of COVID, we didn't really have a lot of curriculum discussions. We were kind of just in the same mode. So what I'd like to do is we'll move forward with this. We think this model will work very well, but I think we could have a larger discussion starting in the spring around what do we want to look like? Where do we want to go?
So you brought it up, and I wasn't gonna say anything. If we get into a budgetary situation, we really have, like, the question of suddenly we've got a big bump in students and we've gotta find teachers. How critical is it that we roll out those guys, and the new smart boards, at the same rate as we planned? Are they already purchased and contracted, it's a done deal, or is there some capacity for, like?
I think when I look at the smart board, there's a training component. So I think there is a little bit of a lag. We have some teachers who are already using it, and that will give us more trainers in the building.
Right.
And when I have a question, instead of having to call the company, maybe Amy's down the hall and she's been using hers for a year now, and it's a much quicker piece. Nope.
Amy down the hall is usually
She's
covered
covered
in
in
paper.
Yeah. It's a bulletin board.
She's got the easel that
Yeah.
she's flipping the big paper.
Yeah. So I think we would have to balance that, because obviously if we needed teachers, I would not purchase the boards.
Right,
if
so
that
there
gave me
is
a
some
teacher.
possibility
Right.
there, it's,
Right.
okay.
One of the things we face really at HPS is just size.
Physical space.
Yeah,
Space.
I mean, we would probably have to go to start taking space out of this
Right,
area
right,
here
right.
to classrooms.
Right.
But I think that is kind of always been the model, and it's an efficient use of our building. And, worst comes to worst, you eventually, if you get too big, you have people on carts.
Right, which we know from the
Which
high
is
school.
not the
when it's
ideal piece, but,
miserable, right.
We've been there, done that. So we'll do our best to plan. I mean, one of the pieces we would look at long-term, if the numbers tend to project like this, it may be worth looking at some sort of preschool facility on the field.
Yeah.
Yep.
And move the 3-4-year-olds in kindergarten to a facility designed to them. We would build some space on there so the SAU could be there to provide further supervision,
So much
uh,
sense.
you know, because I think when you look at the cost avoidance through preschool for those students and their rate of acceleration that we see, it's money very well spent. You know, I think when we've always looked at 3 and 4 years old, we've always been so worried that they're babies, and they are. I mean, we can't forget, you know, where they're at, but they come in and they want to be like everybody else. And that in itself allows them to make some great strides, because they have their non-handicapped peers to model behavior.
Absolutely propels them forward.
It does, it's amazing. Going down to personnel in special ed, these are the biggest pieces right now. We're asking for a BCBA assistant. This is another person who would specializes in data collection, autism behaviors, things like that, for these self-contained programs.
What does BCBA stand for? One more time, please.
Board Certified Behavior Analyst.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Then we have, to go along with that, based on student needs, 3 RBT trained paras. And RBT is a specific training on how to work with students in the programming and how to gather the data and record the data. So then the BCBA can come in and look at that data and then make decisions based on where they're going.
Do these folks, do the BCBA people, I never did ask this, do they sit on IEP 504 teams, like with parents and?
When necessary, yeah.
Yeah.
They can,
Yeah.
okay. But they're not always on the,
Correct.
No,
parent
they-
wouldn't
they-
automatically see some.
Almost consider it an expert coming in.
No, I understand what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
I didn't know if they joined the teams.
For some students, yes.
Okay.
Because that student has been identified in their IEP and they're always gonna get those services for a period of time. Other students, they might come in because they went in and did an observation to determine if services were needed.
I just have to say, the public cannot appreciate, who doesn't deal with this, the incredible change agency that these people trained and skilled in this area can make in a student's life, like just what you were saying. It's transformational to have a highly trained, highly skilled individual watching your child in the classroom, one-on-one, in all the different settings that we have, in order to see what we can't see. Even classroom teachers who are exceptional teachers can't see because they don't have the expertise, and interpret. It's taking, please understand me, and making a kid understood. It's incredibly valuable.
Then we have a need for a pre-K intensive teacher for that programming.
Is that driven by enrollment?
And that's the one that I discussed where we had to make the hire, but it wasn't budgeted for, so now we're identifying that it's.
Perfect, thank you for that.
At Hughes, we have a need for a .5 OT. Now, Tammy, kind of to your question, this may become contracted services. We may have a need in Brookline and be able to hire one person between the two buildings. And we've done that very effectively where, let's say Hollis hires them, Kelly puts them on the Hollis payroll, and then back ends all the accounting so that it's split from an equal standpoint.
Does Brookline end up paying us for the person?
Yes.
Okay, so you actually get.
Oh, yeah.
It's
payment
fun for the
transfer.
accounting department.
Yes. Yeah, we create some
VC
nightmares for
dub.
them, but it's allowed us to secure some people that maybe we wouldn't have.
Oh, sure. I've never actually asked you if you get, checks.
Well, we get to see it on the folks who are looking
I
at the
know.
approvals and everything. We can see where
That's why I
we're
always
paying
like-
money to other districts for their stuff too, so
Yep.
it goes round and round.
Replacement of computer equipment. We have our regular upgrade to staff laptops. At HPS, we're looking at 5 interactive flat panels. We are moving through to replace the audio systems phase 2. That's an audio system where I wear a mic, and it magnifies my voice. And originally, years ago, I would have only received one if I had a student who had a difficulty. Then what research showed was that all students benefited from being able to clearly hear the teacher. So we've moved that to kind of a universal design. I know it's not,
I think I could have used that.
yeah, we all could have used that.
The guy would have been like, Rob, man.
That explains a lot.
Yeah,
So it's been in place in Hollis for quite some time, but now they're aging now, and so we need to replace them.
The kids love it.
we have Chromebook replacement cycle. We have iPads for a specific group.
Kindergarten, end of life.
Right. And then one of the big things that we have to have the uninterrupted power supply. So we're getting a couple of new switches on that, so if we lose power. Under the shared services software, those are costs that are split up so that we can maximize our services. So we have Windows imaging software, critical system backup, and Smart Suite licenses that are divided between the two schools. We are replacing some walkie-talkies. We are doing a new kiln at the upper and some walkie-talkies there.
I had a question on the burglar alarms. I was looking back, and I feel like those have been an ask in round one for the past couple of years, and I wasn't sure if there's maybe another funding source that we could look into, or is there a way to prioritize that? Is it a priority? I mean, I know it's been asked for a couple of years.
There are mixed discussions when we go through our budget on those items. I can go back to Kelly and we could look at maybe maintenance trusts and that. We have done so much work around the fire systems and all of that. We have, I'll be honest, the police is frequent in this area, so we don't tend to have as many issues. So it's been something that we haven't maybe focused on as much, but we can look into, you know. We have under facilities maintenance, we're looking at doing something to the second set of doors, so when you go out tonight, would like to make that foyer more of a, you know, you get in one set of doors, you're inside, but you're not in the building yet. So similar to what we're doing at RMS, we've done at CSDA, we've done it at the high school, and the designs in place will be done this year for the middle school. We have minor classroom furniture in phase 2. At Hughes, we have some ceiling tiles, the playground mulch, and some plumbing fixtures.
That classroom furniture at Hughes, is that the cycle stuff that we?
Yeah, we start every 30 years, because we realize we haven't bought furniture for probably about 30 years, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Better than 70 years on
Yeah.
don't flip the page yet.
So it's just,
One of
we
my
are starting it, but
favorite-
it's like, school furniture is built to last. And we
Used to be
sure
able to
take
see
advantage of
facilities.
that.
So one of my favorite moments as a non-board member was attending a district meeting wherein one of the most august members of the budget committee stood before the district as the recovery from the recession was more reliable, and said we put off repaving around the elementary schools for 10 years too long, and now we have to do substrate and all this other stuff. And I stood up and rudely asked someone I respect more than the moon, is there someone we can blame for this? And he said, no. And everyone had a good laugh. So I don't want to ever be on the board and have to face such a question from, you know, somebody like me. So,
Yep.
$90,000 Drury Lane repaving. Is this, I'm just, again, it was an indelible moment.
Well, one of the questions we have is really who's responsible for Drury Lane?
Uh-huh.
So that's one of those questions that we need to be answered, because we have, like, we take
You
care.
mean between us and the town?
Right.
Okay.
And let me give you an example. On the white building downtown, one side of that is our property, the other side is the town. And it's
That
just,
would explain the paving differences.
well, and it's just a matter of where we are in budget cycles, like,
But the buses use the town side. Sorry,
Yes.
that's not our district.
Right. right. So, we're looking into Drury Lane, and then we've looked a number of times to figure out, is there someplace else we could put a bus turn? And there really isn't up at Hughes. You know, because when you get to the back, there is that road that goes behind the building, but when you get to the back, that's all our buried tanks
Right.
and leach area and things like that, so you can't easily go anywhere. So,
You can't connect it to the side by the gym?
No,
They're there?
they're there,
Oh, I thought they were behind, okay.
yeah. So
And
they're
it's on
right out in
hillside,
that
it would
grass
be a
area.
huge undertaking, I
Right.
think. 'cause of
So,
the-
we continue, we did have the Nashua Transportation Group came over and did a study and looked at it, and they didn't have a lot of suggestions, but, again, it's simply what's happened is you went from designing schools 60 years ago, when maybe a couple people might have driven to the school, to now we have a, fleet of 20 buses and carpool, and thankfully our SROs have made that much better, when they assist with directing of traffic and things like that. So it's not as bad
Cush
as it
moves
would be.
everyone along right
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I mean, when you think, bell rings at 3:05 and 3:16, we're done. Every bus is loaded.
But it's
and-
hundreds of cars and all
and
those
carpool
buses.
is gone.
and just a lot
So
of wear and
as
tear.
much as that, it's crazy for that short period of time.
It's just that time.
It's just that short period of time. Yep.
Okay, so here's another question then. Should we be creating a trust fund for paving? It ended up costing, some low figure, not low figure, it was close to $200,000 if I remember. It was under it, but just under. And somebody had hurt themselves on our property, et cetera, stepping in a hole and all that. Is this something that's ripe for, because I don't wanna see a $90,000 hit 1 month, one year, one fiscal year, because we just can't put it off anymore and it's actually now 120.
You could actually start to allocate money within the maintenance trust, which Kelly has done for other projects. As you recall, that's how we're doing the unit ventilator up in Hughes. The biggest thing that, from what I learned historically, that we didn't do our seal coating.
Okay,
We skimped out on
that's bad.
seal coating for a number of years. And
Okay.
once you don't do the seal coating, the
That's-
water gets under. And once it gets under to the
Substrate,
gravel
yeah,
level, that's when the problem comes in.
right.
So, to give you an example, at the high school, there's the baseball field and then there's a gravel lot across. That was fixed for gravel purposes last year to remain sitting for 1 year, and then this summer we'll pave it. And then we'll just have to seal coat it, and it should give us many, many years. What we did do is we did the new turf field parking lot, that was gravelled and then coated, so that's the biggest thing. So in the years when the budget's tight, you don't wanna skip seal coating, whether it's your driveway at home or at the schools, because it's gonna come back to haunt you.
But even seal coating on such a expanse of tar is a lot.
It
Is
is,
there
it's,
something we should be doing with a trust fund or maintenance fund, whatever, that sets aside a few bucks a year so it's not all one big hit every 5 years or however many years?
well, the seal coating runs about, I wanna say $20-something thousand, and that, I think, has been on a regular
Okay.
3-year cycle.
Is it? Okay,
And
I
what they
haven't
do
noticed it.
is, with that seal coating, they come in and everywhere there's a crack, they insert the rubber.
We've had it done at my
Yeah.
house, yeah, I think most
So I
of
mean,
us, yeah.
it really, like now, I think it'll be even easier with Lance being on board, because when you meet with the pavers, they'll tell you where you are in the project of when you're looking at. And we should still have enough notice to kind of bring it in more, so you're not paying one
So you
big
can
hit.
spot treat and you can
Yep.
do it in small sections and
Yep.
keep it rolling. Okay, thank you.
And that brings us to, the last page again, where Kelly has kind of mapped everything out. And again, significant, when you think about $327,000 of facilities work, that's a big number for a budget hit. But at the same time, when you drive by this building now in the morning, now that the gym is complete and everything, it's gonna have many, many years of useful life. And when you look at new costs, it's monumental.
And as the budget committee pointed out so many times when I was still visiting them, with the bond and the municipal lease program, future families
Right.
pay their share of using it.
Right. Exactly, so everybody gets the benefit. So that's it for the budget, we still have a ways to go. Kelly has another budget meeting coming up. We'll have another discussion with Paula and that, but if the budget committee were to approve the relief from guidance on that teaching position, you'd probably see this be close to the final budget.
So I think the first review of our budget's Tuesday, right? District budget, yeah.
Also in your packet, I had included information on the Hollis Water Trust. So our current balance is $26,766. We're not looking to add anything this year. We don't have any planned expenses for the water trust, so we anticipate that balance staying the same. And then Kelly was kind enough to put the replenishment plan. So once the balance reaches roughly 20,000, a warrant article for 30,000 will be included in that year's annual meeting to bring the balance back to the original 50,000. From a long-term point of view, the town of Hollis is doing a water study. We have been in contact with them, because I think when you look long-term, decades, we need to look and see what is the best avenue. I know they're looking to potentially get some of their facilities off this water system, but we need to look and see, what does Rocky Pond look like in 20 years? That type of thing. And then I just wanted to give you an update that the SAU budget will actually go to you as a group, along with your other colleagues from the SAU Governing Board, next Thursday. As I noticed in my presentation, the assessment for Hollis is up by $58,339. The brunt of our SAU expenses were a salary and benefits piece. One of the pieces that we don't control, we have 2 staff members that will be moving on to health benefits, so they haven't been taking those. So that's a significant increase in a small budget. But in terms of the, meeting the needs of the SAU, the biggest thing we have, again, long-term, nothing that needs to be done tomorrow, is just what will we decide to do with that building? Every year that we don't do something is another year of just deterioration. So we can fix bathrooms, we can change flooring, we can do those things. But in terms of the barn, at some point, do we decide as a school board to remove the barn, and do something else with that space? Do we decide to, as I said earlier, in the next, say, 5 years, looking at enrollment trends, look at a preschool which is set further on the playground site, and that area out front would become more of the entrance to that preschool? Or do we look at the SAU moving to a different location, and Hollis School Board making a determination if they wanted to divide the land from the building and maybe decide to sell the building? Those are all.
I think part of it has to do with population trends. Of course, they always go up and down, but we have, over decades and decades, the population has increased, and at some point, one of the shortfalls is parking.
Right.
There's a lot of space, for example, at Town Hall, there's an entire theater in there.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys know that. There's a whole stage and
upstairs.
balcony and theater, and it's used for town band rehearsals, but it's not utilized by, culturally by our town because there's no parking. It's grossly inadequate.
Also, I'm just wondering about access, if we did put a facility in the back, off the field, if we separated from the building, I'm just wondering, does that kind of bottleneck us in and leave that, we begin to, reduce the access to get back there, right? But,
Takes a lot of land,
parking,
right,
added,
driveway.
how are we gonna get
Get
back
there.
there without,
But it also, if we have enrollment increase, like if the town continues to grow and enrollment increase, we want that field for the students, the increasing number of kids.
Right.
And
Right.
possibly even educational purposes, so a lot of
And
factors to be considered.
Right, and that's why I say it's not for now or next year. I feel that we should get through paying off, a number of years of our debt, but
projects? Yeah.
starting to look at that, because I think, again, when you look at what preschool is doing, you could decide that you wanted to run preschool and potentially generate revenue. Because we get calls all the time about our self-contained preschool classrooms, because there is a tremendous need for students. And more of your special ed schools are full. There isn't capacity.
It seems like the most logical step for the future
Mhm.
is something like that model. I mean, we could probably optimize the field space, but I mean, if I had to choose, I would be interested in that facility like that,
Mhm.
and kind of mitigate somehow the field needs and stuff.
Well, and I don't think you need to lose the field, because if it's your
No, I think-
preschool, the children would be coming over still just like they do now. But if you think of the space, I mean, depending on what you wanted to do, you could potentially get a different access route to Hughes. You know?
Yeah.
You could do a bus loop over there, and have buses circle around. I mean, you could take what is a footbridge now and make it into a bridge, you know, an
Right.
access. So there are a number of things.
There's
So,
options, yeah.
you know, I'm never a big fan of selling property, because I think it comes back to potentially bite you when you're a school district. I can give you an example. There's a town in New Hampshire that needs a new elementary school, and they're one of the ones who made potentially the funding for the state, but they don't have any land. You know, they're looking to
Where to
find
go.
land within their community. We're very fortunate that there's over 3 acres over there.
That's what I was just
And
wondering,
even if you
how much
tried-
acreage is 3
I'd
acres?
say it's about 3 acres, because no,
And a bunch is wooded,
a bunch is wooded.
so there's
Yeah.
the cleared,
More,
cleared
yeah.
field area, and
Right.
then there's
Mhm.
all that stuff back there.
Believe me, I ran with the kids back there, so.
So that concludes.
Question, Andy, before
Yep.
you reminded us that Thursday, December 15 is it at CSDA? Sorry, the governing
The
board
SA
meeting.
Governing board is, I believe it. is
I
it-
believe so.
Yeah,
CSDA,
and-
yep.
CSDA, thank you.
Yep.
I wanted to confirm that.
All right. So that concludes discussion. As we noted during agenda adjustments, what I wanted to put out there to the board, just to kind of see if you would potentially grant me some leeway. We have our school calendar, and the holiday is Sunday is the new year. We are scheduled to be in school on Monday. We're starting to get some personal requests because many of the districts around us are not open.
I'm sorry, many are, what?
Not
I'm-
open.
I'm not open.
Because they're observing the holiday on
On
Monday
Monday.
the 2nd.
What we had done was observe it on Friday for all our year-round staff, trying to get educational continuity. My concern is just people don't necessarily always pay attention, and some people are starting to notice that now. And we're doing some surveys of staffing to see where we're at, but we've received a couple of requests for personal days because of daycare issues. So, what I'm asking each of the boards to consider to authorize me, if needed, to change the Monday, January 2nd to no school based on staffing concerns. So if I had to make that decision, I would make it before December 23rd when we get out for vacation. But I just don't want to go into that week. People are going to be traveling, they're going to be away. And I know parents have always said to me, I'd rather just know as much in advance so I can plan. So it may not become a problem, but the school board kind of owns the school calendar. Now, I could simply call a snow day, all right?
Snowing.
But as I said to Gina,
Say
my
goodbye
luck,
to plowing. Say no to that.
I mean, I
Yeah.
did say no snow.
yeah. She's like, it'll be 60 and sunny, and so I just wanted to share that what potentially is a dilemma for us. We would simply add another day to the end of the school year. We're scheduled to get out relatively early this year anyways. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. We thought it was a great idea. When I talked to all the other superintendents last fall, they were all gonna do the full week, and then a number of them, for the same reasons. Because again, we're also at a different point than we've ever been because we don't have substitutes. Normally, 3 or 4 personal days, you probably survive, but if it's 6 schools and they're all doing that, I don't know if I'm gonna have, on the Monday after New Year's, 30 substitutes who are gonna wanna come in.
Do you need a board vote, or?
Just to
Your motion?
authorize me to make that, I think is the easiest way to go, and then I'd bring it to the co-op next week and Brookline the week after.
So let me ask this question. You guys had planned to have the 30th off, right, for the full
Right.
year-round staff?
Yep.
So would they then have to work on the 30th and they would get the
What-
2nd off? Or
That's
they
probably
would get both?
I would probably, no, they'll get one. unless, unless you want to be the most generous people.
Well, I'm only asking because if people have already made plans for
Right,
that weekend already to
Right.
now have them try to make that shift, I just wanna be mindful of that for
Right.
our full,
And that's
full
kind of
year
why
staffers as well.
I'm only looking for authorization, I'm not saying I'm gonna do it, because we have a number of things to sort through, but I'm not really gonna see you folks again till after the new year.
So, should we make
Do you have a motion?
So I move to authorize the superintendent or their designee to call, how do you want to word it?
Amend.
To adjust,
Amend the school calendar, as needed
that would be fine.
to begin school on January 3rd instead of the current plan for January 2nd.
That works, because everybody knows.
Second.
Okay.
No, third.
Do we have any,
Oh,
do we have any further discussion?
Carol provided it.
But we will be adding the day.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
So we're not losing. a
No, we're
day
not
of
losing
Just
any
like a
instruction.
snow day,
Right,
but
But there's no snow.
right,
there might be. I
There
mean,
might
I'm
be.
saying there won't be.
right.
In some parts of the country,
Can
there
I
won't
add
be.
January
Some days we
2023?
want the snow plowing, other days we don't.
Yeah.
Now we
don't-
want snow.
I don't, you can, but
Do you think there's gonna be a need? The current trajectory is telling you there's gonna be a need.
the current trajectory is telling me to cover my bases. That's all,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm trying to do. And again, we've got a few, we may not get any more, because the other thing that's happening is people are realizing they're working, and they're already starting to make their adjustments. It's just, even though we gave the calendar out last April, that doesn't mean people looked at the calendar.
Well, and I think, I mean, just speaking from someone who works in the corporate world, it's almost always observed, if the holiday's on a Sunday, it's observed the day after.
Right.
So I think everybody just had that on their brain that it was
Right.
gonna always be that.
Right. And
So I
that's-
was actually kinda surprised when I glanced at the calendar, cause I'm not working that
Right.
day, that my kids would be going to school.
Right.
So I remembered then the conversation of why we did it that way,
Mhm.
but it did take me
Yep.
off guard. Okay.
Any further discussion?
And Andy, you said
Yeah,
you were
I
gonna-
guess that, so, I guess just what you're saying though, that there may be some parents that are suddenly gonna have to figure out what they're doing with their kids that day on short notice too, right?
Well, it'll be more notice than they would typically get for a snow day,
Okay,
because I would make the decision before we left on the 23rd.
you can't make everybody happy ever, right?
No, no.
That's where
No.
you're stuck.
No.
Alright, you just gotta
Never
make the
do.
tough
Even
calls,
this
and we're
group-
gonna authorize you
Never do
to,
it.
Right,
to
right.
take
And,
it.
ownership.
and again,
And we're just gonna sit back and watch it happen.
it's more, why I'd like to do it is from a safety standpoint. If I don't have the bodies, I don't have the bodies, and making that call at 5 AM on that Monday is
It's
gonna
no fun.
create a
Not
lot
good.
more anguish
Right.
than telling people,
A week ahead of
they have 10
time.
days, yeah.
Right,
Yep.
yeah, and all that information helps us
Yep.
all understand it too.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Oh yeah, we had to vote on it.
5-0.
Love motion.
I'll turn it over to you.
With the bed.
Okay, the next item, if I could get a motion around the anti-discrimination plan, please?
I can do that. I move to approve the updated anti-discrimination plan.
And a second? Second. Okay, all discussion.
So I'll just identify the changes that have been made. So we approved this last month, and while we were approving it, Brookline was seeing it for the first time. And one of the members brought something to our attention. So on page 2, under summary of parent guardian rights, there was an update to IDEA 2004, and the older law was identified, and the one that we approved here. And then in item 1, it included a second sentence that's no longer true based on the update. So that has been removed. And so really, it's just an update to the most current law.
It's just aligning to that. the new
Yeah,
law.
so this is what the co-op approved last week. And we'll go to Brookline next week or whenever they meet for approval, so.
So that's the only difference from what we looked at last
Yes,
month?
yep.
So Brookline, like, declined to approve?
So
and then
because
was
they're at the
looking to
end of the
have it-
month, they were seeing it for the first time, and then they had to move their meeting, so remember, they was on the same day.
Yeah,
So they were
that's right.
seeing it for the first time when you were voting on it, which
So they're
caused a
a
problem.
reading behind us.
They're reading behind.
Gotcha.
So what are you?
So if you
want
want
us
to, because I think
do?
the question was actually brought forward that night, well, what if the other boards don't approve it? And so I just wanted to be fully transparent. It is a district SAU-wide document, and there has been a change. Not a change to any of our practice. I mean, we follow the most current laws that are in place, but I wanted to bring it to your attention and make sure that it was, formally accepted as the updated version.
Would it make sense to not approve it until we're sure Brookline's gonna approve it? I mean, if there's.
No, there's no worry. It
Okay,
was,
all
the board member has a level of expertise around special
great,
education
that's
and
great.
and picked it up, like we would have potentially
awesome.
not caught it.
So
So-
actually, did they approve it? Because they had two
Yes.
meetings in November, so they've
Yes. When
actually
it was just Dan
approved
and
it.
I, they did,
Okay.
so we're
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, so, all in favor?
Thank you, and I apologize for that.
No apologies, that's good, glad they caught that.
All right, moving on to policy. EBBD, indoor air quality and water quality. Can I get a motion?
Sure. I move to amend by inserting "or there" following superintendent, accept the third reading and adopt policy EBBD, indoor air quality and water quality as amended.
Second,
Okay, discussion.
no, that was just for consistency's sake, those changes, right?
Yes.
Or theirs.
Mhm.
Yeah. No other changes.
And it's third and adopt, I'm sorry, is that how you read it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
500 passes. Change of school assignment?
This is, I'm moving to accept the third reading and adopt policy JCA, change of school or assignment, best interest and manifest hardship, and rescind policy JEC, manifest educational hardship.
Can I have a second?
Second,
Discussion?
and there were no changes from our last reading of this, correct?
Correct.
Is that how I understood you? And the reason we're, rescinding
Rescinding.
the other one was because it's all incorporated into this
Correct.
one?
Mhm.
Okay, just to clarify, thank you. No other commentary from me.
Anyone else? Comments? Okay, all in favor? 500.
Crushing these adoptions tonight, guys.
What's next?
JLD.
JLD, yes.
Just gotta get ahead. Okay. I move to amend, the last paragraph by replacing guidance counselor with district, program or plan with school counseling curriculum, and identifies with promotes, accept the third reading and adopt policy JLD, school guidance and counseling program as amended. So the,
Second.
Whoa, okay.
so those changes were based on the notes that we took back from the last meeting to try to improve
Yep.
the wording, of that last paragraph to better reflect, practice.
I like the change. I think it's solid.
I do too. Tammy, how do you, I know
Oh,
you.
that's perfect.
Okay, okay.
Good.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? 500. Okay. Moving on to
Alright.
EBB.
I move to accept the first reading of policy EBB, school safety program.
Second? Can I have a
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
All right,
So this is a new policy? And it's required by law, and it just discusses the comprehensive safety program within the schools that we follow. So we've had a program, but we're just required now to have the policy that identifies the components.
Are there any changes that are needed to our current processes based on this policy?
No, in fact, we do update annually and review it. Every individual school does, but we also work as a full leadership team to look for consistencies and trends and needs and training requirements. So we've, done a great job, I think, in our district with safety. This is just, like I said, now required by law that we have this particular policy, so.
Yeah, just a little
You see
closer
it.
definition of it.
Mhm.
In some ways, it almost highlights it, because it like references all these different pieces,
And we already
and it
do
was
know
like
what
check,
they
check,
do.
check, check,
Yeah.
check.
I have questions.
Mhm.
The word safety, is so generic.
Mhm.
And, one of the things I don't think I saw in here, I read it really closely, and I completely agree with Brooke, it's just like, do we do that? Yep. And we do more than this, actually, from the reports that the administration has always shared with us. But I don't see anything in here specifically related to bullying, and I didn't know if that just simply doesn't fit into this
Yeah, there's an
definition
entire
of safety.
correct. There's an entire separate policy
Okay.
for bullying.
And
Is
then-
is that one of the related policies that's listed? I can't remember the.
No,
I just couldn't.
I
code
think
line
it's
for it.
JICK.
Okay.
That was good, Gina.
We deal with that one a lot.
Yeah, we've seen that one before.
Oh, yeah, I guess that.
Alrighty.
I'm also interested in item 11 and 12 on the second page of this policy. 11 reads, procedure for periodic assessments by school climate professionals to determine whether students feel safe and to provide recommendations for improvements in school climate at each district. What the heck is a school climate professional?
That's a good question.
Well, when I look at that, we have a committee that is formed across the districts.
Right.
And they go in, they visit classrooms, they visit those pieces. And they kind of can do an evaluation of the climate. The piece that we're looking at in Brookline is, we're actually looking at some sort of climate survey that we could administer periodically, just to kind of get another view of that. And we've actually formed we will be forming a subcommittee of the board to kind of discuss that. So I can bring back information, and that's what we've always kind of selfishly been successful at. Sometimes we start things here, and sometimes we start them there, because we only have so much manpower on the boards. So we'll be able to bring back some feedback on that, of how do we kind of gauge that.
So, does the RSA use that language? School climate professionals, and do they mean internal staff versus a third-party vendor?
I think they probably leave it generic because this is gonna be a statewide policy. So maybe we have somebody who could fit the bill in our district, but maybe another
Yeah.
district does not. So they use it as school climate professional, so if they
I-
needed to
that-
contract it in another district, they could.
That makes
schools
sense, but
needed it,
the
yeah.
state doesn't always make sense. Is that correct?
Ooh, Tammy brings the jokes tonight.
We'll bring it back to policy, and,
Yeah.
it's the first read, so we'll
Okay,
dig
curious.
into that and see.
And the other one was number 12, procedures for managing the behavior of children, including proper training and protocols relative to restraint and seclusions consistent with RSA. And I know our restraint policies has been visited a couple times over the years, and is pretty intensely vetted. But who determines the proper procedures for managing behavior of children, including proper training and protocols? I mean, is that,
We use CPI, which is a de-escalation model that
what
staff
is
is.
CPI?
It's, I can't think what the acronym stands for off the top of my head.
I mean, is that a service, or is that?
No, it's a training that
process.
staff goes through,
Process,
and it's a de-escalation process. It stresses, not putting hands on children, all of those things. You may have to clear a room with the other students if some student is, let's say, having a seizure or having a discipline issue. So that does kind of exist for us, but we can look at that too to further, I'll say.
I don't have an opinion on anything, it's just such a puzzling, such a generic, language for something, it's such an intensely serious matter, and I'm like, what does that even mean?
Right.
And how do you fulfill the responsibility based on how this policy is proposed?
Yeah, I think that's another piece we can bring back to policy. Some of this has arisen because districts around the state have struggled with restraint and seclusion. So this is kind of a response to that. We've been doing CPI, I think, for as long as I've been
Might be,
here.
it's
probably-
Crisis Prevention
Prevention.
Institute.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
Yeah.
So would it make sense to put CPI in our policy?
I would not want to kind of
'Cause there's
force this
other
into a
programs that you can
program.
do, yeah.
I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure if
Yeah.
you were saying that we'd use it for that amount
We
of time.
have used
if
it
there
for years,
was-
but we're always,
Mhm.
we look to see what behaviors we're seeing, and then what,
We'll service
Lauren's
it best.
team kind of assesses that and figures out what's the best approach. And if our, BCBA's are stating that there's, either a potential second training that should be required for an alternate behavior, or going in a different direction, I
Gotcha.
wouldn't want policy to force us into
Makes sense.
it. But we could wordsmith it a little bit.
did you guys write this, or is this?
This is a sample.
boilerplate from-
This is a sample policy.
From
Yep.
the School Board Association?
Yeah, and so we
Right,
can
so that
really-
makes sense, I just, that
Right.
it's general, but.
Yeah, and
I-
we can take a look at the language and really make it a little bit more catered to what we do, which is we have.
I would just like to see something more specific around defining, so my view of policy is that, y'all use it to guide, shape what you decide to do as administration. But parents look at that and say, what is the school expectation for itself, and, are they meeting my needs, or, meeting, exceeding, or shortfalls? And I don't, so I hate to put, a parent or the administration in a situation where the language is so general that we could be liable for something we're not liable for, and the parent doesn't know that, and it
Yep.
Information gaps produce, confusion, and often that translates into pain and money, and if we could be a little more specific about what those, things are.
Or even the time frame that we follow for the training.
Or
How
any of
often,
it,
how
any of
often
it,
do they
yeah.
go through that training? Is it yearly or
I
something
know
like
it
that?
shouldn't
We
be
can mention
too
that.
specific, but I feel this is so general as to leave holes that
Absolutely.
multiple members of the school community, whether it's you guys or us or parents, could fall into unnecessarily.
Thank you.
And can you have them spell buses correctly in the paragraph that says each principal shall be responsible, please? What?
Okay, everybody in favor of, approving this for first reading?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a leading question. Ms. Jones.
I think it was, could you tell?
Y'all are on board with this, right? First reading?
We just get this moving along.
Trying to.
Sorry, this is a lot of big stuff.
No, I know, it's great, it's great. Okay, the next one, Brooke.
I move to amend policy, IHBAA, special education, determination of a specific learning disability in its entirety by replacing it with the copy provided with the agenda, and accept the first reading as amended.
Second.
Discussion.
So there were there's some updates to the law that required that we review IHBAA. And we were following, of course, the law, but now we have to update our policy to reflect that. So this first went to Lauren, and then went to legal, and then went to policy with recommendations here. And then we policy committee took a look at some of the language, and then went back to Lauren and made sure that we were all comfortable with it. So many eyes have been on this one.
And I'll follow up with my question that I had earlier too. Is this going to change any of what we're actually doing?
No, our actual has changed with the law. It's just policy catching up.
Perfect, thanks.
It's mind-boggling how such a few words can impact how many students of the greatest vulnerability. And I just have a million questions. I'm trying to narrow them down to just one or two. You answered the basic question, is what's driving this giant change of language, even if it doesn't, Carol's point is the most important one, is that we're meeting our obligations legally and morally, and this isn't changing any of that. It's just responding to changes in RSA language that we have to update, so that's good to know. it shall be the policy of the Hollis School District to evaluate for specific learning disabilities in a manner consistent with the procedures and standards included in the New Hampshire Department of Education rule, blah, blah, blah. If I'm a parent and I have concerns that my kid may have, you know, any kind of learning obstacles, that just takes the entire burden of understanding what my options are, my opportunities are, where do I start? The where do I start question, like many of us in this room, I have been through this, and it is awful, and I'm not gonna compare the new language to the old language or anything, I'm just saying that is so general, and it just takes the entire New Hampshire Department of Education, special education regulations and RSAs and everything, and says, here, you go figure that out, and then come let us know if you think that we have to do something. That's not, again, I don't have specific language to express how much I hate that. And then a specific learning, and not a discredit to anyone who wrote this, I'm just thinking of it as a parent who has a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 9-year-old who's having, you know, my kid's so smart, why can't he read? My kid's so blah, why can't she this? When you're, this is so unhelpful to that parent. A specific learning disability is determined through professional judgment using multiple supporting evidences. All staff, students, parents, other interested persons are directed to the New Hampshire Department of Ed Special Education Procedural Safeguards Handbook. I completely get it that we don't like to put links in our policies because the links break, they change, you link it to the state and the state's changed it. So I'm great with that, but again, it's just, there's the cliff, go jump off of it. Figure it out and come let us know if your kid qualifies, if you can make us do something. It's not your fault. I'm not complaining to you or to you, but this is dreadful. It's so short, Andy. I'll be done in a second. And then in making determinations regarding whether a student has a specific learning disability under state and federal special education rules, the district shall use, quote, the pattern of strengths and weaknesses model set forth in New Hampshire State Board of Education rule, blah, blah, blah. And then the response to I'm sorry, this is just, it feels, even if it's not, it feels like a giant brick wall to me. And I just need it not to feel like that. I will never vote for this. Even if it's absolutely legal and ethical, it's impenetrable. And I think that's just cruel. I can't live with this.
Can I suggest, if you could do an email to the administration that we could bring to policy so that we could work on those, because I'm not gonna disagree with you, some of the wording, because the other piece is some of our practice, it aligns with the wording, but we're much more user-friendly than the wording.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
could
So,
not be prouder of
right,
what we do in this
right.
district, but that, as a
So-
policy for a parent, having to first try to figure out, I remember one of my kids in a private preschool, and I remember the teachers, there, unable to figure out what was wrong. I won't waste your time with the story of how Officer Bergeron, massive change agent, like an angel from heaven for a 5-year-old. However, it was because I'm such a difficult person that I literally walked into the school and asked the school secretary in tears, what am I supposed to do? Oh, we're responsible for helping you with that. That policy does not tell that parent who's in tears. And it turned out to be a medically based issue that ended up over many years of assistance from the district, all proper throughout the RSA process, and all of this, supported a very gifted student who had very serious handicaps grow into their strengths, et cetera, et cetera. But the starting, I didn't know where to start, and no one knew where to start, and it was hell getting started. And I do not want to perpetrate that hell getting started sensation. I do not want our district to ever appear to have a brick wall that causes resistance for parents who need help.
So
So there are other policies that address the identification of a student.
Mm-hmm.
This is specific to SLD. So this policy would apply once you're already in that conversation. So this I don't feel that this, we can absolutely take a look at the language and try to figure out another way, but this policy wouldn't be that initial policy of, I need help with my child. It would be not
Unless
the,
it's the first policy you read as a dumb-ass mom like I used to be.
but if you're going through the policy manual, you're gonna see, I don't know which one, IHB, not IHB, AA, that starts on
You
that.
have an extremely orderly mind, which is why you're an award-winning teacher and curriculum development person.
Well, if you
But
did a
nuts don't
search
fall
for
far
special
from
ed.
trees. I don't want us to have any policies that come off as hard ass. It's absolutely wrong. So, for example, if you had unicorns and rainbows at the top of it and then all that boilerplate language, I would stop talking.
Unicorns-
It needs to be-
Unicorns and rainbows. I got stickers too.
I think I hear what your ask is, and I think we can go back and discuss it and maybe
Just
package
facilitate
it
the
in a different
reader's
way.
understanding of what all that stuff is.
I think what Andy asked for is gonna be awesome because you are very passionate about it and very connected to it, to be able to kind of come up with what would feel good to you, and the policy group can
So
take
email
that and
Brooke and Gina?
put it in.
sounds good.
Yeah, just as you
Thank
did the school counseling one, we really reflected upon all of your comments that you provided and tried
And
to.
then you were happy with
And
it
threw
too.
them out?
No, we didn't throw them out. We
No,
incorporated them.
Perfect, I'm just being annoying, I'm being annoying. You know how I get when I
You
get,
said you were
when I
happy
get
with it.
wound up, I don't stop talking, you know how I
me.
am. Stop.
Okay, so
Alright.
let's approve this one. Anybody in favor of approving this one
Anybody
for
in
first,
favor?
first reading?
Anyone? As long as I have my-
First reading.
All right, so a motion to approve this for first reading. All in favor? Okay, 5-0-0. All right,
Much better.
last policy.
All right, I move to accept the first reading of policy JLCJA, Emergency Plan for Sports-Related Injuries and Additional Protocols for Athletics Participation.
Second,
Second. Sorry.
discussion.
Okay, so this is a required policy for any school district that has fourth grade and through 12. So that includes us. It's an interesting one because it talks about sports that we don't offer. But then when you consider sports, we do offer sports and athletics within the physical education program. And so,
Recess options.
and recess options, et cetera. So it does, there is an application to our district. So this, like I said, it's required, it's new. It's 100% in line with the RSA that was recently passed. One thing that will become a change in practice for us is the student medical history. So we're used to having the health forms every year that we can get. We can get a specific form or whatever form your doctor's office is looking for to provide for, the annual physical for the child. This one specifically asks for things that are not typically covered. For example, injury or illness related to or involving any head, face, or cervical spine, sickle cell trait, etc. So now we are looking at creating our own school district medical form for families to bring to their doctor
But
for
that'll be
completion.
throughout the state, every.
And this is throughout the state, so everyone across the state will need this new form. We have our co-op board, because they're a little bit ahead of our district, just based on sort of the content and the sports. They're working to see, is the state putting out a form? Is there a sample form that we can, modify for our needs and then go from there?
Are the doctor's offices themselves creating a form since they all have this
Yeah.
They see these kids.
inundated with this?
Yes. So some schools already have a mandated form that they use. We just never required it, so it will be, some bumps along the way as we change
What the
procedures.
heck is wet globe temperature?
So
not
it's
dew
wet
point.
bulb globe temperature. So it's missing the word bulb, by the way,
Wet
in the headline
bulb
of
globe?
C1.
Humidity.
Yeah,
What is it?
humidity.
No, say it again, it's wet
Wet
what?
bulb.
Wet bulb globe temperature. It's written out properly in the text, but in that header, they forgot the word bulb. So that's why it looks weird.
It looks weird, wet bulb globe temperature. I guess I'll look it up. I forgot to look it up.
No, it has to do with humidity levels.
Oh, okay.
for Christmas.
That's really a mouthful, it's like you have marbles in your.
come true.
You hand polish it yourself.
Go outside and
All
swing
right,
it around.
so we have a motion, on the floor, all in favor? 500. Okay, and I now need a motion for non-public, please.
So moved, or do I
Well,
need to
I
I
read
would
move
like
it?
that the
someone to
board by
read it.
roll call go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, parentheses, A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, and C, Gina, Andy?
Yes.
And
Yep.
C, to discuss a matter which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of a person other than, how come I don't remember this yet, than a member of the body or agency itself.
Second.
Okay, and roll call, please. Tammy?
Tammy, aye.
Brooke, I.
Rob, aye.
Carol Roy, aye.
Amy, aye. We are in non-public,
And we're heading down to the conference room down the end of the hall on the right.
7:46.
Will we be
Joe,
coming
you
back
could pack
here?
up, we won't be coming back here.
Coming back.
So no business conducted after the non-public except to adjourn.
Just to adjourn, yeah.
Thank you so much.
We've been spoiled, cause in my head I anticipated